Okay, so we're diving into something a lot of you have been asking about, and it's a big one. Unlocking your full potential.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, you found this really structured text that actually lays out an 8-part framework
8 parts, yeah.
to actually try and achieve just that,
Exactly.
unlocking that potential.
It's like a cheat sheet almost, to
Yeah,
getting to the core of what this all means
absolutely, yeah.
and figuring out what pieces might really work for you, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things about this source is that it views personal growth
Hmm.
not as this like
Like one
one
goal.
giant leap,
Like one giant leap.
but actually as the cultivation of all these different interconnected areas.
Right.
So, starting with understanding yourself deeply
Yeah.
and then actually moving all the way through to finding a meaningful direction in life. So,
Yeah, it goes through, it lays it all out, like self-analysis, mindset, environment, even your habits, the actions you take, discipline, feedback, and then ultimately purpose.
wow.
It's a lot. It's the whole game.
It is the whole
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
but that's kind of the point, right? It's like all these things kind of play together.
Yeah.
So as we go through this, I really want you all to be thinking about which of these areas feel like, okay, yeah, I've got a pretty good handle on this, or which ones you're like, maybe there's some room for growth here.
Totally. So let's actually start right at the beginning then
Okay.
with self-analysis.
Okay.
So the text really emphasizes this idea of understanding your current landscape. Like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Yeah.
What truly motivates you? And I love that it actually gives you some really practical exercises,
But like what?
like journaling. And not just like journaling what happened to you today,
Right.
but actually using that journaling process to actively question your beliefs, to identify patterns. What resonates with you about that as a starting point?
I think for me, it's the idea of, we all have these big visions for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right. But it's like, how do we break those down to something?
Yeah, it feels manageable.
Right.
And the source talks a lot about setting these short-term milestones,
I love that.
And that way it doesn't feel so overwhelming. It feels like you can actually get there.
Totally.
And I think also it's about, I think it's easy to kind of skate over those limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
But like really getting honest with yourself about what those might be.
Right. And that honesty is
Yeah.
actually so key because it fuels that next step,
Oh, okay.
which is cultivating a growth mindset.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So the source really reframes challenges
Yeah.
as not being roadblocks,
Yeah.
but being essential learning curves.
Okay.
Like that is how you actually learn.
Mm.
And there's this really powerful idea in here that failures essentially are just the next iteration in the learning process.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, like it's okay to fail
Yeah,
as long as we're learning from it.
totally.
Yeah, okay, I like that.
And it also encourages you to experiment more.
Yeah.
Like try things, don't be afraid to
Yeah.
mess up because that's actually where the learning happens. So
Cool.
talks about, nurturing that curiosity
Yeah.
and also building that resilience,
Mm.
that ability to kind of bounce back when things don't go as planned.
You got to be able to get back up.
Yeah.
Totally. And that kind of leads into the next part, right?
Well, it does, but it's interesting because this internal work that we've just been talking about,
Yeah.
the source then says, okay, let's actually look at your external world.
Okay.
Let's look at how you can optimize your environment.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that includes consciously choosing who you surround yourself with.
Oh, right. Like who are you hanging out with?
Yeah, it even playfully refers to this as your motivational people gang.
I love that.
Minimizing distractions by designing your physical and digital spaces for focus
Oh, interesting.
and actively seeking out resources
Okay.
like insightful books or mentors.
So it's really about being intentional about all that stuff. It's all about intentionality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really underscores how much our environment shapes our focus and drive.
Totally. Like if your desk is a mess, it's hard to focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And then kind of following on from that, the manual then delves into this really foundational aspect of building healthy habits.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big one.
So we're talking about those core pillars, physical well-being through exercise, nutrition, and sleep.
Right.
But alongside mental well-being practices,
Oh, good.
like mindfulness, gratitude,
Yeah.
maybe even therapy, if that's something that you're interested in.
Right.
And it also touches on some effective time management tools, like the Eisenhower matrix, which
Yeah.
helps you prioritize tasks based on urgency and importance.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a good one. But the thing about all these habits, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're separate. They all kind of feed into each other.
Right. They fuel your potential.
Yeah, like if you're not sleeping well,
Exactly.
you're not going to have the energy to exercise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And your focus is going to be off.
Exactly.
So it's all connected.
Totally, totally. Okay.
So the source then moves into this really crucial element of action and experimentation.
Okay, yeah, so we've got all this foundation down.
Right. The groundwork.
Yeah, and now what?
Now you got to actually do something.
Right.
So this is where that theory actually becomes practice.
Mm.
So the text advocates for tackling problems incrementally,
Okay.
learning by doing, so through projects or new experiences,
Right.
and constantly refining your approach based on the feedback you're getting.
Oh, so you try something, see how it works, and then adjust.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that progress often comes from consistent, small steps.
So it's not about these massive overnight changes.
No, it's about that steady, consistent action.
Okay, I like that. It feels more doable.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
And you know, to do that, to take those consistent actions,
Yeah.
it requires discipline and focus,
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
which is the next area that the source explores.
I mean, that's something I struggle with.
I think we all do.
Yeah, like sticking to routines, even when you're just not feeling it.
Totally.
Or prioritizing those long-term goals over that instant gratification.
Especially in today's world,
Oh,
right?
totally. It's so easy to get distracted.
Yeah,
And carving out that dedicated time for deep, focused work, it's hard.
it is. But the source makes a really interesting point that discipline is often that invisible force behind significant achievements.
Okay, so it's like the key ingredient.
It's a key ingredient, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then it highlights this vital role of welcoming feedback and opportunities for growth.
Okay, feedback can be tough.
It can be,
Okay.
but it's so valuable.
Yeah,
So that means actively seeking constructive criticism,
okay.
viewing mistakes as learning opportunities, not as failures,
Right, right.
and also acknowledging and celebrating your progress along the way.
That's so important, yeah.
Right, because if you don't recognize those wins, big or small, it's hard to keep that momentum going.
Totally, totally. So we've gone through all these different pieces.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, and then the source finally brings us to discovering your purpose.
Ah, yes, the big one.
It feels almost like the culmination of everything else we've talked about, right?
It does. It feels like the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and it's not just about figuring out what you're meant to do.
No, it's much deeper than that.
Right. It's about aligning your actions with your core values.
Right.
And considering how your skills and passions can contribute to something.
Yeah, something meaningful that's beyond yourself.
Like making a difference in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And the source suggests that connecting with your purpose is like this powerful, sustainable driver of your potential.
So it's not just about achieving things for yourself.
Right. It's about contributing to something larger.
Okay.
And it actually posits that your greatest growth can come from that, from contributing to a larger cause.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And, you know, when you look at this framework,
Yeah.
it's really outlining this continuous cycle.
Yeah, it's not linear.
It's not at all.
It's like everything is interconnected.
Exactly. So you're understanding yourself, you're intentionally cultivating growth
Across all these different areas.
across all these different
You're
areas.
taking action, and then you're aligning with your purpose.
And then you loop back around
Yeah.
and you keep going and you keep refining.
Totally. So as we kind of wrap up here, I want to ask everyone listening, considering all these different parts, right?
Yeah.
What feels like the most compelling place for you to focus your energy right now?
Good question.
And what's one small action?
One small step.
Yeah, one small step that you could take today.
Today.
Yeah, to move in that direction.
It doesn't have to be huge.
No, just a tiny little step.
Just something to get started.
Yeah, because remember, unlocking your full potential, it's not a destination.
It's a journey,
It's a journey.
an ongoing exploration.
Exactly. And hopefully this deep dive has given you all a valuable framework for that journey.
I hope so.
I think it has, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some really good stuff in here.
Me too.